So Captain Marvel's come out, and to, I guess, no one's surprise, it made a lot of money, despite the fact that there were a lot of people before this movie came out saying that it was going to be the MCU's first flop, forgetting that The Incredible Hulk is a movie, and a lot of people saying the phrase "get woke, go broke," expecting it to fail, and then it's made $456 million on its opening weekend, and now everyone's saying that, of course, it succeeded. Why wouldn't it succeed? It's a Marvel movie. It's just kind of funny how the stories have kind of turned around ever since the numbers have actually come in for it. But I want to talk about these numbers because a lot of people are saying that, like, yeah, the opening weekend was fantastic, but wait until week two. Wait until week two. A lot of people, or not a lot of people, I've seen some people use The Last Jedi as an example. It grossed a lot of money. I mean, $1.3 billion is nothing to laugh at, even though some people think it was a flop. But $620 million overall in the domestic cume is pretty good, right? But some people like to point out that it had a 67.5% drop between week one and week two, and then a 55% drop, and then surprisingly week three only had like a 26% drop. But yeah, they had some really big drops week over week over week, and a lot of people like to use this movie to point out that, like, oh, it's not said and done. Captain Marvel might have done really good first weekend, but wait until week two where no one is going to go back to see it again. But I do want to point out that there is another movie that they should be looking at, which actually has a bigger drop off week over week than The Last Jedi did, but no one ever mentions it, and it's actually within the DC extended universe, and it's Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. To, I think, no one's surprised, because if you look at the weekend, it had a 69% drop week over week, but no one ever compares Captain Marvel to Batman v Superman. They're all comparing it to The Last Jedi because there was no real controversy, the likes of which Captain Marvel and The Last Jedi had surrounding Batman v Superman. I mean, yeah, Batman v Superman had controversy around it, but it was more of like how they fucked up the story more than like what's actually going on with Captain Marvel and what went on with The Last Jedi. You got these people who want to compare Captain Marvel to The Last Jedi and say, look, because of the controversy surrounding Last Jedi, look, it had such a huge drop off, and they want to spin the story that way. But it's more appropriate to compare Captain Marvel, a superhero movie, to Batman v Superman, another superhero movie, and the fact that Batman v Superman actually had a bigger drop off on the second weekend than The Last Jedi did, but because the controversy surrounding it isn't the same as Captain Marvel or The Last Jedi, they don't run with that story because it won't fit what they're trying to say. What I want to do in this video, I want to go through the actual numbers of like what these numbers actually mean for The Last Jedi and what it could mean, and for the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, to be fair, and what it could mean. Because people like to look at like the drop off week by week, and it'll be like, oh look, The Last Jedi didn't have any legs, yet it still went on to make $620 million domestically, right? And like you can compare it to something like Aquaman, where Aquaman, sure, like Aquaman opened up to under $68 million. It wasn't like an $80 million movie. It wasn't like Wonder Woman where it opened up to $103 million, but then it had the legs and it went on to make $333 million domestically. It had the legs to stretch it out, but at the same time, it made, I mean, still in theaters, but like so far it's made like, not exactly, but about $300 million less domestically than The Last Jedi did, despite the fact The Last Jedi had apparently this huge drop off week over week. So I want to put these numbers into perspective here, because you can say that like, oh, Aquaman had a lot of legs because look how much money it made in comparison to its opening weekend, and yeah, it did. And you can look at The Last Jedi and be like, well, it didn't make as much money in comparison, but it still made a lot of money. What I want to do is, there's this certain video that I watched where they used the Last Jedi as comparison. They're like, we're going off history here, and history has said that a movie like The Last Jedi, with the controversy surrounding it, had a terrible second weekend, apparently, according to them. Even though its second weekend, if I look here again, its second weekend still brought in $71 million, which is more than a single week or single weekend that Aquaman has ever had. Aquaman's best weekend was its first weekend, where it made just under $68 million, and here, with this massive drop off, they like to point out The Last Jedi still made more money than Aquaman ever did in one weekend. But I want to fully put these numbers into perspective, and using history, as this one guy said, I'm going to take the multipliers of the domestic and foreign grossing and compare those and use those and put them to the Captain Marvel numbers to see, just to get an idea. So what the multipliers are, for those who don't know, is basically you take the domestic and the foreign, because we use multipliers for both of them, but we'll split them up. So you take like the domestic total grossing of a movie and you divide it by its opening weekend, and then you get the multiplier. So you get to see basically over its theoretical run, its actual legs throughout that theatrical run. Like if it had like a 2 times multiplier, which one of these movies on this list I'm going to show you has, that's a terrible multiplier. That means it had terrible legs. Whereas a movie with like a 2.6, 2.7, 2.8 is a bit better. Interestingly enough, the average MCU multiplier for domestic grossing is 2.78. Okay, so keep that in mind. 2.78 is the average multiplier for an MCU movie. And I will be going through every single MCU film using both the domestic and foreign multipliers, and then we're going to apply them to Captain Marvel. And like, this isn't a very good way of predicting how much Captain Marvel will make at the box office, but through this we'll get like the best case scenario and the worst case scenario for how much money it could make based on history, as this one other guy said, using The Last Jedi, all of the MCU, and we're going to be using the DCEU. We'll start off with The Last Jedi. So I'm going to be using the calculator on my computer, and it will have a history here so you can see it. What we're going to do both domestic and foreign grossings. We're going to find the multipliers and apply them to the Captain Marvel numbers over here. And we got a more actual number here. Instead of 302 million even, we got an actual number here. So let's go through it. Let's go. So it's Last Jedi, 620,181,382, which is really good for domestic. Despite what anyone would want you to think, that's really good. So we're going to take that number and we're going to divide it by this opening weekend number right here. So we have 220 million, 9,584, which is 2.818, this big number. So basically 2.82 almost. And remember what I said, that the average MCU multiplier for domestic grossing is 2.78, meaning The Last Jedi actually has more than what the average multiplier was than the MCU franchise does. So that's actually not that bad when you put into comparison to the overall MCU. So what I'm going to do, we're going to take this number without changing anything, and we're going to times it by what Captain Marvel has made domestic. And the only number we have right now is this number, so we're going to have to use that. So 153 million. And that's the number we get. So if we use the multiplier that The Last Jedi had and we apply it to Captain Marvel, we'll get $431,289,172 for its domestic, which is pretty good, I would think. So now what we're going to do is that we're going to get rid of that, and now we're going to do the same thing for foreign. So for foreign, it had 712,358,507, and now what we're going to do, we have to go to foreign, and then we have to use this number by weekend here. It kind of does suck because some movies do come out earlier in some regions. For example, I was in Brazil in January, and How to Train Your Dragon 3 was already out in January, like a whole month before North America got it. So some places get some movies really early on, but we have to just take the number that Box Office Mojo here gives us on the opening weekend. We're going to have to use that. That's the best number we got. So we're going to take this and do the same thing. Divide it by 230,812,305, and then we're going to get that number. So I had basically a 3 times multiplier. So now we're going to take this number and we're going to times it by the foreign grossing. So 303,285,175. And we get a total foreign grossing of 936,032,307. That's close to $1 billion just for foreign, and that's using the multipliers for The Last Jedi. So now we'll add this to the 431 and we'll see what the total is if we were to use the same multipliers for Captain Marvel. So 431,289,172, and so we get a total of 1,367,231,479, which actually is a bit more. Yeah, it's a bit more than what The Last Jedi actually got. Mainly because The Last Jedi's foreign opening weekend was 230 million, while Captain Marvel's was 303 million. That multiplier for the foreign pushed it just over The Last Jedi. But if we were to use The Last Jedi's multipliers, which, because some people like to compare Captain Marvel to The Last Jedi, if we use its multipliers, we see that Captain Marvel would make $1.3 billion. I honestly didn't think this movie was going to make $1 billion. It still might not, but we will see with the worst case scenario with one of the movies we're going to get into, what the lowest Captain Marvel could make using their multipliers. And now that we did that, and you can see the numbers with The Last Jedi, I'm going to go through and I'm going to show you the numbers I got from the other MCU movies and the DC movies. And I was going to, and I actually did record the whole process going through it, but then the video would have been like over an hour long, and no one's going to sit through there and watch me mumble at myself for doing that. So I've cut that all out, and I'm just going to give you the final numbers. And if you don't believe me on these numbers, you can do it yourself. You already saw me do it The Last Jedi. Just do the exact same thing and you should get the same numbers. So the way I'm going to do this is that I'm going to go through the MCU first, and I'm going to go through the order of release. So we're going to start with Iron Man, we're going to end with Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then for DC we're going to also go in order, but we're going to do 2 DC movies at the end, because they are both the best and the worst results, or the best and worst possible outcomes for Captain Marvel. So we're going to start with that. Just so you know, the way that this is going to work is that I'm going to tell you the domestic multiplier and the foreign multiplier, and we're going to use those numbers, put them together. So you take domestic multiplier, times it by what Captain Marvel made in the first opening weekend, take the foreign multiplier, multiply it by what Captain Marvel made in the opening weekend for the foreign total, and we're going to get a number, and that final number will be like the total grossing that Captain Marvel will get if it had the same multipliers of the specific movie. All right, and this is in no way like a prediction of like how we should predict how much money Captain Marvel is going to make based on multipliers, because the numbers are all over the place. It's just to show you what movies you think had a lot of legs, but when you actually apply the multipliers to one specific movie, you see that maybe it didn't have as good as legs as you thought it did. And I'm just going to read you out a simplified rounded multiplier number, because you saw in my calculator that we got like 10 decimal places. I'm not going to read all those. I'm going to round it up, but just so you know, just like we did with The Last Jedi, whatever number I got for the multiplier in my calculator is the number I used, and I times that by the domestic and the foreign numbers that we got. So starting off with the first Iron Man, it had a domestic multiplier of 3.23 and a foreign multiplier of 2.69 for a total of 1,310,758,749. For the Incredible Hulk, which, by the way, is the failed Marvel movie, it's the flop, so you would think that its multipliers would be crap, right? Well, take a look for yourself. So the Incredible Hulk had a domestic multiplier of 2.43 with a foreign multiplier of 4.18 for a total of 1,640,117,541. Iron Man 2, for the domestic multiplier, 2.44, and for the foreign multiplier, 3.36, for a grand total of 1,392,846,591. First Thor movie had a domestic multiplier of 2.75 and a foreign multiplier of 3.01 for a total of 1,334,077,769. Then we have Captain America, the First Avenger, a domestic multiplier of 2.72, a foreign multiplier of 3.91, for a total of 1,600,447,351. Now we have the First Avengers with a domestic multiplier of 3.01 with a foreign multiplier of 4.81 for a total of 1,926,965,848. Iron Man 3, domestic multiplier 2.35, foreign multiplier 4.06, for a total of 1,591,137,733. Thor: The Dark World, domestic multiplier of 2.41, a foreign multiplier of 4.01, for a grand total of 1,537,084,951. Then we have Captain America: Winter Soldier, domestic multiplier of 2.73, a foreign multiplier of 6.04, for a grand total of 2,251,267,273. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, a domestic multiplier of 3.53, a foreign multiplier 6.63 for a grand total of 2,550,868,603. Then we got Avengers: Age of Ultron, domestic multiplier of 2.40, a foreign multiplier of 4.70 for a total of 1,793,746,824. First Ant-Man, domestic multiplier of 3.15 with a foreign domestic multiplier of 6.01 for a total of 2,305,322,213. We got a Captain America Civil War with a domestic multiplier of 2.28 and a foreign multiplier of 3.72 for a total of 1,476,354,123. Then we got Doctor Strange, domestic multiplier of 2.74, a foreign multiplier of 5.07 for a total of 1,956,840,741. Now we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, a 2.66 domestic multiplier and a 4.47 foreign multiplier for a total of 1,762,955,216. Spider-Man Homecoming, a 2.86 domestic multiplier, a 3.91 foreign multiplier, for a total of 1,623,835,707. Thor Ragnarok, a 2.57 domestic multiplier, and a 4.94 foreign multiplier for a total of 1,891,036,293. Black Panther, a 3.47 domestic multiplier, 3.82 foreign multiplier for a total of 1,688,575,696. Avengers Infinity War, the big movie that made over $2 billion, right? It had a domestic multiplier of 2.63 and a foreign multiplier of 3.58 for a total of 1,488,023,276. And then finally for the MCU, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp at 2.86 domestic multiplier and a 4.73 foreign multiplier for a total of 1,870,914,775. So now, if we move on to the DCEU, we have Man of Steel with a 2.50 domestic multiplier and a 5.14 foreign multiplier, which equals to 1,941,710,777. Suicide Squad, a 2.43 domestic multiplier, a 3.16 foreign multiplier with 1,331,640,255. Wonder Woman, a 4.0 domestic multiplier and a 3.27 foreign multiplier for a total of 1,604,381,525. And Justice League, a 2.44 domestic multiplier, a 2.32 foreign multiplier, for a total of 1,076,530,059. And like I said, I saved the best and worst case scenario for Captain Marvel for last, and we'll start off with the worst case scenario, which was Batman v Superman's multipliers, which came out to a 1.99 domestic multiplier and a 2.12 domestic multiplier for a total of 946,842,270. And the best case scenario, which there is no way this is going to happen, but this is the best case scenario, Aquaman's multipliers came out to a 4.92 domestic multiplier with an 8.59 foreign multiplier for a grand total of 3,359,109,587. Like I said, using these multipliers, our numbers are all over the place. We have the worst case scenario being over $900 million, but then the best case scenario being over $3 billion. If somehow Captain Marvel did become the best case scenario, then it would make $600 million more than the current #1 movie of all time has made. There's no way this is happening. This does say, though, that Aquaman had huge multipliers. Aquaman, out of all these movies, had the best legs by looking at these numbers, and the movie with the worst legs was Batman v Superman, for both domestic and foreign. It's kind of funny because people like to compare Captain Marvel with The Last Jedi, and if you use The Last Jedi's multipliers, which, by the way, like I said, The Last Jedi has a domestic multiplier of 2.82, which is higher than Avengers Infinity War, which had a 2.63 domestic multiplier. The difference is that Avengers Infinity War's foreign multiplier was 0.5 points higher than The Last Jedi's, and that's why it came out to more money. But domestically speaking, technically, The Last Jedi actually had longer legs than Avengers Infinity War did, even though Avengers Infinity War was in theaters for 20 weeks, while The Last Jedi was in theaters for 18 weeks, and The Last Jedi managed to get a bigger multiplier and less weeks. When you put these numbers to actual use, you can see that, like, yeah, The Last Jedi had a huge drop-off, but technically had better legs than Avengers Infinity War did. Just looking at these multipliers, like, look at Captain America Civil War. It made $1.1 billion. It had a domestic multiplier of 2.28. That's the second lowest on this chart that I made here. I don't think anyone would say that it's a failure, right? But it's way down there for domestic multiplier. It does bring up the question, though, that, like, maybe movies that get a shit ton of money in their first opening weekend, especially domestically, maybe they don't have huge domestic multipliers because everyone goes to see the movies in the first week, but that doesn't mean that it's bad, right? Because like look at Aquaman. It made $67 million opening weekend, but now it's at currently $333 million total domestic for a multiplier of nearly 5. But then you'll have Captain America, where it had a really good opening weekend, around $180 million, and it made what, like over 400. Let's just make sure it had a $408 million domestic grossing in total, because it opened up to $180 million opening weekend. Its multipliers, meaning its legs, weren't that great, but I don't think anyone would say $408 million domestically for a Captain America movie is bad. So in the end, who really knows how much Captain Marvel's going to make? But considering how it made almost $500 million in the first weekend, $900 million doesn't seem very far off. Personally, I thought that Captain Marvel was going to gross around $700 to $800 million, because I honestly thought that the controversy would somewhat dampen it. But considering how it's already halfway to $900 million, and like I just shown, the worst case scenario using the worst multipliers of all these movies would result in Captain Marvel making over $900 million. I think getting to $900 million is a definite possibility, maybe even $1 billion. By next week, if Captain Marvel has a big drop like Last Jedi did, a 67.5% drop next weekend, that's all you're going to hear is that, oh, Captain Marvel is failing, Captain Marvel is failing, when I just showed you that in the end, Last Jedi actually had a better domestic multiplier than Infinity War did. Just because a movie has a big drop in the second weekend doesn't necessarily mean it's completely failing, right? Because if a movie opens up with huge numbers, it's going to have a big drop-off by the next week. So don't let these people fool you, because these are the same people that say that Alita is winning at the box office, despite the fact that it hasn't even broken even yet, which does suck, because I do want to see Alita at least break even. A sequel's going to happen no matter what, because James Cameron can get whatever he wants done, but I do want it to at least break even, because that could potentially mean other Hollywood studios out there might take more Japanese stories and adapt them. As it seems right now, Alita is still struggling to get there, yet these people say that it's winning at the box office, when you can damn well be sure that if Captain Marvel comes out next week and the numbers come in and it has a big drop, like 67%, that's all they're going to talk about how it's actually failing, because their story went from, oh, it's going to flop, to wait till the second week. So hopefully this clears up a bit, and now my predictions for Captain Marvel have gone up. I'm going to say at least 900 million. I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to say 1 billion. I'm going to say 1 billion, because with the numbers I looked at and I showed you, that $900 million should be the lowest case scenario for it. So hopefully this clears up some questions that you had, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. That is that. So, and this video has been going on for quite some time, so I'm going to let you go. So have a good day.